I want to start by saying community has always been a really important foundation.
It's like when the tides rise, all the boats are lifted.
Wow, you're on top form.
You meet people in the emotional state they're in.
I want to play devil's advocate with you there.
And I've just made probably a very dry subject interesting to you.
My purpose was to help people, inspire people.
How do we lift others through community? Let's hear this, Holly Cope.
You're either challenging me or I'm in trouble.
Have you ever heard the phrase, your network is your net worth? Well, I'm going to take it one step further. As a lawyer, it's easy to get caught up in the technicalities, building authority, marketing your firm, or perfecting your craft. But what I've learned is that the real value lies in something much deeper. Community. It's about who you connect with. And the bottom line, your community is your greatest asset. It's not just a luxury, it's an essential. The connections, the shared ideas, the collaborations, your support system is in your community. Your network is in your community. Your clients are in your community. In law, it's not only about what you know, it's about who's in your community. Here's why.
We've got to start by understanding why it's important. Community isn't just a buzzword. It's actually a really, really important thing. And this is what I found anyway. You know, if you would have said to me 2 years ago, or even probably a year ago, build a community, this is going to be the foundation, the fundamental structure of your business and future in business and entrepreneurship, I would have probably said to you, number one, why? And number two, how? Because it's a very confusing thing and a lot of people just don't understand it, I think. And today we're going to be just going over why it's important and how you actually build a community and answer those fundamental questions. But I want to start by saying community has always been a really important foundation. I mean, if you look at, you're going to hate this, Helen, but I'm going to actually make a reference to the Beatles now. So, warning. But basically, the reason why the Beatles became so popular and are still popular now, like, you know, so much time after, is because they built a community. They built a massive fan base, people who connected with each other based on the fact that they had this common thing, which was that they all loved the Beatles. And the Beatles created a hype and a collectiveness in a time when liking a band like them was actually a rebellion and a bit of a revolution. And people came together on the basis that they liked the same band and the same fashion and all the things that came with it, pretty much in a nutshell. So community has always been important. But now, with the power of like LinkedIn and social media and podcasting and media in general, it means that ordinary people like me and you can create our own communities, our own mini communities, not on the scale of the Beatles, obviously, but our own micro communities. And that is super amazing. And the power of that is that you build a community, you build a following, and you can pretty much do anything.
Yeah, and I think this is really hard for people to understand. It's just really, really difficult. Like, if I sort of simplify this, when I say my dad now doesn't really understand what I do, he can't get his head around it. He sort of understands that I've got quite a big following on LinkedIn. He just goes, so how do you make money out of that? Or if I talk about, okay, so yeah, I've got a podcast, he'll say, yeah, but I don't understand how that translates into a business and into clients. And I think it's this sort of, it's a very new way of doing marketing whereby, you know, you basically make yourself kind of the brand. It's really powerful, but it's not really about you. And that's the big mistake. And I think that's particularly complicated for lawyers to understand, because actually we're in a highly competitive industry where it is quite dog eat dog. And I do think people are often out for themselves. I think teamwork is a term that's bandied around. I think there's often not that much or that good quality teamwork within law. So you say to a lawyer, oh, build a community. It's like, well, why? Why do I need a community? But the idea is, not everyone wants to hear all about you and everything you've got to say. When you build a community or a big following, what you're doing, or building your own brand up, what you're actually doing is connecting with people on their level. It might sound like it's about you, but it's not. It's about them. And this is a really clever nuance. So, to any lawyers out there thinking, well, community is not relevant to me, community is everything, because you need to connect with your ideal clients, with your ideal audience. And it's going to be through a set of values and through who you are that you connect. And when those people believe in you and they connect with you, they will want to be in your network. They will want to be associated with you, to collaborate with you, and potentially to buy from you.
Wow. I could not have put it better myself. That was amazing, Helen. I love the way you said that. That was powerful, man.
Oh, cheers. I actually only got one in there. And then I thought, Holly's told me on podcast I'm not allowed to say So I was like, oh, slow down my speaking.
Nice. Love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, you're right. The key thing to what you just said there was the fact that people think it's about them, but it's never about them. It's about you. It's about the audience. It's about the community. It's about everyone else. And so I think people think, okay, well, I'm the center of the community, so therefore it's all about me and what I do, and it's all about taking. But in actual fact, it's quite the opposite. It's all about giving value. And this is where people go wrong. I guess people probably fall into two camps. Number one, they don't want to give value, because giving value is a lot of time. We spend hours recording podcast episodes, doing LinkedIn lives, sending newsletters with tips, giving so much value through our LinkedIn posts as well. It's a lot of time and effort. So people will just think, I don't have the time to give value. The type of person in another camp who just thinks, well, what value can I give? I truly believe that the core of building a community is giving value. So this point is very important, and we need to explain in more detail how you give value and how you have time to give value. So what would you say, Helen?
So I had a really interesting conversation this week with a lawyer who was saying, well, actually, I want to engage my audience by talking about certain particular subjects. And they were saying, but I don't know how to make that interesting to my audience. I don't know exactly what their pain points are, i.e. the points which affect them that, they would need help with. And I said, well, instead of thinking about how do I start telling people about this topic, actually turn it back and look straight at the client to begin with. Because, this isn't a university lecture. If I start telling you about corporate law, that's going to be really boring for you. No one cares about the black letter law when they're a potential client. We want to know about how do you solve my problem. So there we go. First of all, you have to get really clear on who your ideal client and your ideal audience is. When you understand that exact profile of who you're talking to, you then work out what problems do they face and what challenges do they face. And then you work out how you solve those problems and how you help them sort out those challenges. Those are the pain points. And this then actually turns this from a factual exercise of, let me tell you about this type of corporate law, to I'm going to connect with your real problem, your human story, and your emotion. And by the way, these are the things that connect, because on this platform, it's people buy from people. It's all about human connection. If I tell you about corporate law, that's boring. If I tell you about a recent case whereby, a director has been found dishonest in a particular circumstance, and this actually is a ruling which could affect a lot of people who are directors, I could tell this in a really interesting way. I can weave in story. I can connect with your fear, which is your emotion in this. And you're going to want to read my post. And I've just made probably a very dry subject interesting to you. So nothing exists in a vacuum. You add value and you create value for people by meeting them where they are at, by understanding their problems inside out, and by providing the perfect solution to that.
Wow, you're on top form.
Thank you.
So you've said this to me a number of times, actually. You've said this phrase to me, meeting people where they're at. What does it actually mean?
It means understanding the place that someone is. Okay, let me maybe rephrase that. It means, for example, say I'm speaking to somebody who's 13 years old and I want to connect with them. I'm probably going to use different language, different terminology, a different way of speaking from how I would talk to somebody who's 60. I also would try to relate to them on subjects that might be meaningful to them, you know? And again, actually, I'm not even going to try and pretend like I really know what connects with a 13-year-old these days, but I'm guessing it's going to be extremely different again from a 6-year-old. So I'd be asking them, what are your interests? What do you like doing? How do you spend your time? How's school? What's your friendship group like? You know? And a 60-year-old would be doing a similar sort of thing, but trying to understand them. It's basically mirroring people, trying to understand them as a person and meeting them in the place they are at that particular time. And if you go to a networking event, if you listen very carefully, and you should be doing more listening than talking, people will give you so many clues. If they tell you, for example, something using certain vocabulary, and you mirror their talking by dropping in the similar words to them, or even mirroring their body language, they are much more subconsciously likely to warm to you and to feel as though they are connecting with you. So instead of thinking about yourself, you always put the other person first, you listen a lot, and then meet them exactly where they are at.
Interesting. I want to play devil's advocate with you there.
Go for it. Let's hear this, Holly Cope.
I find it funny when you use my full name because I know that I'm like, you're either challenging me or I'm in trouble.
It's true. Yeah. Which one is it now?
You're challenging me. Or I'm in trouble for questioning you live.
Yeah, I can't believe you. A live where we don't actually have much audience. But
who knows who's watching? Anyway,
yeah, that's true. No, those lurkers.
Exactly. So you say meet people where they're at, which means, in your opinion, mirror people, which will subconsciously build trust, make them feel more comfortable with you, and help them connect with you on their level. So you say this is an important part to building a community, but what about authenticity? Building a community, you need to be authentic, because otherwise people will struggle to connect with you as an individual, as a real individual. But if you're saying meet people where they're at, which I completely understand, but you're saying kind of mirror how they are, does that clash with authenticity?
It doesn't. It doesn't need to, put it that way. Okay, so let me rewind slightly. I actually got this expression from my therapy training. So when I trained as a psychotherapist, they talk about meeting people where they're at. It means you meet people in the emotional state they're in. You meet people where their trauma is, with understanding, with no judgment, and understanding that, for example, say someone that's gone through something really terrible recently, they may not have the capacity to do certain things at the moment, to have certain conversations, to even go to certain places, say from an emotional perspective, but you just meet them where they are from that place of compassion, kindness, non-judgment. Okay. So that's where that comes from for me. I've then I skipped over that stage slightly because I suppose we're talking about it in more of a potentially a sales context, but I think this is a really important point to do with authenticity. There are people out there, there are, narcissists who will just mirror you and be brilliant at making relationships, making connections, and, leading you into that sale. Those people exist. That's certainly not where I'm coming from. I think when I, for example, speak to anyone or I encounter anyone, I would just try to understand them as best I can. If I can help them, I'm very happy to. And if we have common ground, then great, let's connect. I think everything can come from a place of self-interest or interest in the other, but that comes down to you, your value base, and who you are. So there's no reason for this to be inauthentic. And I would never stand there in front of someone and say things that didn't feel right to me. I would just probably be aware that if I really want to connect with this person, this is a great way to do this. What do you think, Holly? Is that an approach you would take?
Yes. I really like the approach. I don't like to be inauthentic. In fact, I can't actually do it. I physically can't do it. I really struggle with not being myself, and I can't pretend to be anyone else. So I think what I do is, like you've just explained there, is I adapt myself to certain people. And I think that's just emotional intelligence, right? You're just adapting yourself to different people's situations or how they act, how they are, and knowing how to approach a certain person depending on what they're giving you. So, it could be that someone is a little bit shy or a bit of an introvert, and you would approach them slightly differently to a highly extroverted person. So I'm still being myself with these two complete opposite individuals, but I'm just adapting my style and my mannerisms to fit with their comfort zone. Right.
And just to give a slightly different spin on this, I'm curious, if we're saying that community is about the other, not about us, how do we lift others through community? How do we make it a positive experience for them that makes them want to be in that community and want to stay with us?
Really, really good question. I can only speak from experience and what's happened to me, and you can probably do the same. And I reckon there's probably a lot of overlap. But when I first started posting on LinkedIn and even started the podcast More Than a Lawyer, I wasn't necessarily doing it for the purposes of building a community. In fact, community wasn't really something that I knew how to build or that I knew was relevant at the time. It's only when I started growing did I realize the true power of it, right? People coming together. So from my experience, building a community and a dedicated following, a dedicated audience, comes down to a few points. And I would say it comes down to authenticity, which we've already covered, being yourself, but not only being yourself, but sharing your personal stories. Doesn't need to be private, doesn't need to be secret, just being a little bit open about your stories. So I shared my journey from, working in law, becoming a digital nomad, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a podcaster, starting a podcast. I was very open about my journey from starting a podcast. And I took people along with me on that journey. This is my first episode. I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm learning, I'm experimenting, I'm testing. People like that. So I was very, very transparent about what was happening with me and what I was learning along the way. So being open, being authentic, being transparent, that's one thing. Another thing would be tapping into your why, your reason why, your purpose. So why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you building a community? The reason why I started posting on LinkedIn and started building my podcast, I started on LinkedIn to build my podcast. So they both kind of intertwine with each other. The reason why I did it was because I wanted to talk to the person that I was just a few years ago when I was working in an office, a 9 to 5 job, and I felt trapped, I felt stuck, and I wanted to get out and I wanted to travel and work, but I didn't know how to do it. I felt like working in an office was the only way, but I knew it wasn't right for me. So I found a way to get out of that, basically escape the 9 to 5 and build my own business and be able to build my lifestyle of travel around that business, which is something that was an absolute dream to me, something that seemed almost impossible in actual fact. So now that I've gone through that journey and I started my podcast to help people realize that there is another way to do law. You don't have to be stuck in an office. You can be a legal consultant and be a digital nomad at the same time. You can set up your own law firm. You can get out of law completely. So my reason why, my purpose was to help people, inspire people. And that is the thing, probably the thread that goes through the whole community that I have built. It's a community of people who not only want change in the legal industry, because I talk about toxic cultures and things that you talk about, problems within law, but I also talk about doing law in a different way. And all of these people have come together and believe in the same purpose, which is that they want to see change, they want to better themselves, or they want the industry to change. So I would say, to answer your question, building a community comes down to two fundamental points: being authentic and living and breathing your purpose and your why, and making sure that everything that you do revolves around that.
I absolutely love that. And I think as well, if without wanting to make this sound trite, but I know this will be a question on a lot of people's minds listening to this. Okay, that's all well and good, and that sounds great, and you're living out your purpose and you're happy. Well done, but how do we make money out of this? How do we make a business? The reality is people buy from you when they believe and resonate with your why. It's not your what. It's not about what you sell. It's like you could be selling almost anything, but if they believe in you and your why, you can change that up. You can have a different service that you introduce, but they're buying into you. They're wanting to connect with you. It's a bit like Apple, if you take that as an example. They produce technology essentially, but they don't have an icon of their phone or a computer as their logo. They have an apple, because you're buying into the emotion, the feeling behind the brand. It's about innovation. It's about knowledge. It's about sharing knowledge. And it's so much deeper than that. And it's a similar thing with the personal brands, right? You're buying into the person. So I absolutely love what you've just said there, because a big mistake people make on LinkedIn as well is that they're so desperate to sell their wares and their services that they just focus on that. But if you do that, there's no connection, and you're not really creating a solid client base that believes in you or your product. So that's a big mistake in my mind. And something else came to mind as you were talking there, that actually really this comes down to service of others, giving to others, because actually we rise by lifting others. That's one of my favorite quotes. It's like when the tides rise, all the boats are lifted. So if we can get into a community and collaborative mentality, not only will we personally win better, but everyone around us also wins. And that has to be win-win. And I think this goes to a really interesting conversation that we had yesterday with John Matthews, which is another podcast episode to be released, where he was making the point. He's an expert negotiator, spent a whole career doing these massive high-end top negotiations. He said there is never a case in a negotiation where if one side feels that they've lost, that is an overall win. Both sides need to feel like they win. Now, look, I get it. Sometimes in litigation, you have a side that wins, a side that loses. But mostly in business, it is not a zero-sum game. We rise by lifting others. Would you agree, Holly?
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely love that and everything that you said. And like you say, John was saying, it's got to be a win-win situation. It can't be a win-lose, or where one side feels like they've slightly missed the mark on what they actually wanted. And that's the same with, you can literally transfer that into community building. Everyone needs to feel like it's a win-win. You're winning because you're uplifting and giving value and feeling really rewarded by your community, and they feel the same from you, that they feel like they're getting so much value from you. And then it becomes this lovely relationship of reciprocity where you're giving value and then the other side is paying for your services because they genuinely want to work with you because of the person that you are. This relates to a question that we've actually got, which is a really good question, which is, when it comes to community building, so how do you measure the success of your LinkedIn community building efforts? What metrics are most meaningful?
I think this really depends on why you're building a community. It depends on what your purpose and aims are and what the aims of the community are. For example, say you're a charity and you're looking for people to join your charity to help do some particular work. That would be the aim, to onboard people, to get them on board with your cause and to get them helping out. If you're building a community because you want people to be inspired by the work you're doing and the services you offer, and maybe people who really want to buy your products, then your metrics might be something like, the number of people in the community, the number of engaged people, the number of people turning up to events, and then it would also be sales metrics as well. So it completely depends on what your aims are. For some people, money is not the aim. For some people, money is the aim. But if money is your only aim, you won't have a community, because that's not the reason that people join one. And we have a very similar why: to make law a better place, to connect with people, to create a better future for law, to create a community where people want to see law done differently. And that means, for example, we've got top law firm partners. That means we've got digital nomads. There is no one size fits all, but everybody shares the values that they want things to be better and they want things to be done differently.
We are so excited to help you unlock LinkedIn's potential with our LinkedIn Starter Pack for lawyers. Across 11 chapters, we'll walk you through creating a profile that stands out, crafting content that connects, and building a network that works for you. It's designed to help you take your career or business to the next level. It's completely interactive, so it's not like reading a dull book on marketing. Go to the link in the description of this episode for more information.